Hi, today I'm going to talk about what I've been working on for a while, and I want to do a series of these. They're going to be pretty boring if you don't like watching people make games or program or do anything within Unity. I've been working on this for quite a while now. Actually not that long, maybe about 2 months or so, maybe a little bit less than that, a month and a half. I don't have a name for it. Internally, I'm calling it Roid. I don't know why. I think I actually, when I was creating the project, I looked at my phone, which is an Android, and I said, you know what, I'm just going to call it Roid. Maybe I was thinking of steroids. I don't know. I don't know what the reason was, but you're going to hear a lot of clickety-clackety because my keyboard's loud and it's on the same desk as my microphone because I can't find my microphone stand. You're probably going to hear a lot of clicking too. I apologize, but hopefully it won't spoil the experience. And I'm going to walk you through just a small section of the game. Now, everything is going to look like absolute junk. And I'm not going to say that's on purpose or anything like that. It is going to look like junk in the end a little bit. Whoops, I did not mean to walk backwards. Oh, that's bad. That's embarrassing. Okay, we're back. So as you can see, I screwed things up a little bit because I've been working on the scene management, but I'll get to that later. Okay, so this is Roid. Again, work in progress. The light maps haven't been fully generated, so the shadows actually look like shit, and the walls are untextured, and the lights are definitely not supposed to be there. I'm not sure why they just appeared. But let's go into a small section of the game. What I wanted to create was a big Metroidvania game where you could explore freely and collect upgrades, and it was in 3D instead of 2D, which is fine. I have nothing against 2D games themselves, but I figured, why not? There actually aren't that many 3D Metroidvanias. I don't really know why. So I wanted to do something special. Again, this is pretty early in the game. This is right after the beginning. You are dropping down into this hub world, and then you walk over to this section, and I'll show you guys the other sections later, but right now, this is the very beginning. You don't have any kind of weapon or anything like that at the very beginning of the game. You actually don't even start with the ability to jump. You gain jump very early on. It's the first ability you get, but you go into this section, and you can explore a bit, and you can see this door here. You try to go near it and nothing happens. As you can probably guess, you need something to open it. What I wanted to do is avoid giving the player any boring upgrades like keys or, if you ever played Guacamole, they had keys as Metroidvania upgrades, which I thought was really silly because they were so boring. They had other upgrades too, obviously, and I thought it was a great game, but my favorite upgrades are always ones that you get that not only let you traverse levels differently and act as keys in that way, but help you in combat and make you move faster and stuff like that. Just all around help you become better at the game. So we're entering the first section of this area where you can actually die. You've got a thing over here that shoots you. I'm actually have it in debug right now, and those little balls won't hurt you. So I'm going to walk through this area. Again, the shadows look like crap because I've turned the light map resolution way, way, way down. Because there's this, I don't know if it's a bug or what, but every time I rebuild or move an object, the light maps have to rebuild, which makes sense, but that takes forever. And I can't figure out why. So, as you can see, that little turret there I made myself, and it looks terrible. I don't know if it'll look that much better in the actual full game. We've got some crushers here that kill you if you go under them. And there will be health at the top left corner of the screen eventually. I had a little enemy here, which I thought was really cool. If you walk near it or under it, it starts spinning and then drops down and explodes. It's pretty cool. So walk into here, game gets saved, and then it's not actually a bomb, but it's a gun. And you can shoot stuff with it. Now, I'm going to replace this gun with something else. I don't know what yet. Probably make something myself like that turret. It's going to look like shit. I don't really care too much. But yeah, probably find upgrades for it eventually or something of that nature. So if we walk outside, we can now shoot and kill these turrets. Yay. It kills the bullets too because they're like big cannonballs. I don't know, I might change that. And then we can walk through this section again. Walk back to the door we saw earlier. And go through it. Oh, we can kill this turret too. Actually, I have several other enemies in the works. I've got a little ball that chases you around. And I looked into the enemies in the 2D Metroid games to see how I could replicate them. And I have a lot of ideas for stuff, which I will get to later on. Here we've got a little platforming section of where we don't want to fall into the lava. And we've got these shooter things. Oh, that's a bug. That's supposed to actually shoot you downwards. Oh, that's actually not supposed to. Okay, that's actually pretty cool. And then we've got a little section here which automatically shoots you to where you need to go, which is cool. I'll have little enemies flying around here eventually for you to kill. Maybe timed platforms that shoot off. I don't know. Another little platforming section. This is all unfinished, but it's going to have enemies in this section, which makes it a little bit harder. It actually is harder than it looks to control. Oh, crap. I forgot to drop down to the save at the bottom. Oh, no, I'm an idiot. Oh, well. And as you can see, I still need to make it so that enemies respawn once I go back to my save. See, if I stand under this, I die instantly and go back to the save. Whoops. Oh well. Okay, but you got the idea. So like I said, I've been working on this for about a month and a half or so, give or take. It's pretty great so far. I'm enjoying it. Unity is awesome. I've been working with Unity for quite a while now. I've already started scripting the first boss fight, but I'll get to that later. You unlock the air dash after the first boss fight. I'm considering putting it in before the first boss fight, but I haven't decided yet. Okay, so let's look at another section of the game. So if we unload this scene and unload this, whoops. Let's load up the starting scene and unload the hub. This is how I have you starting right now, although it might be a little bit broken because the player here is actually a little bit outdated. But you can take a look. So once we get this going, you start out in this outdoor area and you have no jump. You can't jump anywhere. And it's actually not performing super well because of all this grass. It needs to be optimized, or rather the grass just needs to be removed a little bit. But you start off in this area and I'll probably have some cool animation of the player dropping down out of the sky or coming up from underground or something like that, and have some power-ups up here that you can't reach for whatever reason because you don't have your jump and you don't have your air dash and you don't have a grappling hook and all that junk. But eventually I'll have you come back up here. But anyway, so if we go on to the next area, you find this little tunnel here with a bunch of lights, and you walk to the end of it. I don't know what's going on with the lights right now. You walk to the end of it and the ground crumbles from underneath you and you fall down this shaft. And some music kicks in. I don't know if you can hear that. It's probably through my headphones. There's actually no sound at all in the game other than this song right here. I'm having a friend make music for the entire game. Obviously, this all needs to be polished a bit, and this looks better than the first section, but not by that much. So you come up here and you gain your first power-up, the jump. Something is bugged there because it should have dropped down. Oh my god, I gotta stop playing this sound. Hold on. Open volume mixer, Unity, please stop making sound. Okay. Yeah, so this is the hub area, or where the game begins. Right now there's only one direction to go in, but you've got a bunch of these floating platforms, and your goal is to basically get to the other side. It's very linear. It's very much like a jump puzzle. If you ever played Guild Wars 2, I thought was a really good example of this. It had a bunch of sections in the game that were jump puzzles, or where you basically walk through this platforming section of the game. When you get to the end, you just get some like basic MMO dumb rewards, which I thought was one of the best parts of the game, personally. So this is kind of the same thing here. You don't have any enemies or anything like that. It's just really basic. Again, this is like the first 30 minutes of the game or so. And then you get to this section, and oh, I know why it's not showing up, because I removed the UI from this section. Whoops. Oh well, it'll still work. Okay, so you get to this section. You continue on. And you go past all these asteroids. I don't know, I might make these a little bit harder. I might change the textures on this. It all looks really ugly, I'm not gonna lie, but it's a work in progress. And you go up here, and you guessed it, you are back at the original first part of the game. And of course, it loaded up the scene with another player in it, so it loaded me up right here. So it's a little bit buggy. And the lights aren't baked in all the way, or something's wrong. I don't know what it is. I'll fix it later. But yeah, so this is what I've been working on for quite a while. I think I've already said that like 3 times. Yeah. What I'm looking for right now is ideas of rooms to implement. Originally what I was going to do was create a bunch of room prefabs, or essentially pre-made rooms that, you know, have enemies in them and, you know, a couple of platforms, and have you going through them and just like connect them all and try to make them somewhat interesting. But then I thought I didn't want any repetition or anything. I wanted every room to be somewhat unique. Metroid was pretty good about that. There's if we pull up like a Metroid map, it's pretty unique. There's not a whole lot going on in terms of repetition, which is great. Which is actually really impressive when you think about how big even the original Metroid's map was. And they had like a bunch of vertical shafts, but the platforms were all placed differently, and they had different enemies and different tile sets and all that junk, which was amazing for its time. Nowadays, it's harder to do because the tooling, the tooling is much better, but it's still, there's so much going on here. There's lighting, and there's physics, and there's sound, and there's art of all kinds, and random code that needs to be made. It's all much more than that very simple NES day of like the 2D, here are a bunch of sprites arranged on a map. Yeah. Now to actually build levels, it's pretty tough. Unity doesn't ship with any kind of level builder, so you need to essentially either buy a tool off the asset store or build in a third-party area. And I could always go to and learn Blender. And I tried doing that a little bit, but the problem is when you're making a game where you're unsure of how your physics work, and especially when you're making like a 3D world, and you need to be able to explore that world and know what your player can reach and know the limitations, and especially if it's a lot of different platforms and moving platforms and all that, it becomes very difficult to go back and forth between Blender and Unity and build that. So for example, if I need to test how far my player can jump, so if I go up to, I don't know why I'm doing this manually when I can just I should actually input some sort of like no clip fly mode. If I'm up here and I need to be able to know whether or not I can jump there, I can't do that in Blender. And yeah, I could always like measure it or something like that, and then go into Blender and then measure how many units that is and figure it out. But there's like 40 different things that I need to figure that out for. Like there's moving platforms, and there's scales of certain things, and there's enemies that need to move at a certain speed and certain direction, and they need to be able to fit through certain holes and stuff like that. So moving from Blender to here is really, really tough. So what I did was I bought Pro Builder. It's an asset on the asset store that lets you essentially get hammer-like functions in Unity. And it's been really great so far. My only complaint is that doing circular areas is pretty much not possible. There's some support for booleans, which is what like curved edges are in Blender and all that stuff, which again I'm not familiar with, so I apologize if I'm using those terms wrong. But Boolean support is really light in Pro Builder. So if I want to do a curved, I'm actually not really sure how to do this, but if I want to build a curved whatever, you know what? I don't even know how to do it. All right, if I build this cube here, see what I mean about the lights disappearing every single time? It seems like the light maps have to generate every single time, and they take forever. I really want to know why that is. So if I go here and go to, I'm sorry, where am I going? Window, no, Tools, Pro Builder, here we go. I believe there is a section here somewhere for Boolean editors. No. Experimental Boolean tool. Oh, I see what this is. So you take two objects and you grab the intersection of them and it puts them together or cuts it off. Or either. Interesting. And that will get you some kind of curved areas. It also ships with a bunch of generics like pipes, which will look more like nuts, and cones also look like nuts, and sprites and arches. Not very archy, but of course if we increase the number of sides to like 30, it actually looks reasonable. Building a full level out of this is tough because I can show you what the process is like. If I build a cube out here, we'll just make it a tiny little cube, and I select a side and then I drag it out here. And then I take the object itself and flip the normals, which means I make the inside what I want the room to be instead of it being like an outward facing object. Making it curve is tough. I can move a single face or whatever and stretch it out. And then if I want to add onto this, or rather cut it up, I can select a vertex and insert an edge loop, which cuts it in half. And then if I take a side of that, I can do something like that. But in the end, it's still not really curved. I just really wish I could make like curved areas and curved hallways. But that's okay. I don't necessarily need curves to make it good. I'll just make clever use of outdoor areas like the starting area and the hub, which mainly rely on their skyboxes to work. I can always create like a hellish type skybox area where the player goes through that, and there's fireballs going around everywhere, just like Metroid's. What is it? Kraid? No, I don't know what it's called. That lava area that's like deep underground. Yeah. So I don't have a lot else to talk about. This is mostly what I have so far. I have a bunch of other stuff coded up, and it's in various states of finishedness, completedness, finishedness, both. Yeah. There was a magnet wall upgrade that I had for a while. I actually had an entirely different section made for this game, but then I realized that it wasn't any fun and it wasn't really well made, if that makes sense. There were little panels on the wall where if you walked on them, they were sort of like ladders, except the gravity would flip towards the ladder. So you could basically walk up on the wall like this, and enemies and stuff would still fall towards that side of the wall because the entire world's gravity would change. And I thought that was really cool, and I definitely want to incorporate that. But the problem is that upgrade is insanely boring. It doesn't really help you. It acts as a key, if that makes sense, and it lets you access certain parts of the game, but it doesn't really do much for you in average situations, which, yeah, I didn't really like. But I'm thinking that I'm going to include it, just have it be as a mid-section dungeon kind of thing, instead of after boss reward. The after boss rewards I always want to be significant upgrades that help you combat and explore. But I can always include midsection parts that help you finish a dungeon. And when I say a dungeon, I don't mean like traditional like Zelda dungeon, like you clear it and you never come back here or whatever. If you look at Metroid, you can divide that entire game up into dungeons. Each section of the world is essentially a dungeon. You go through it linearly, and there's obviously some deviation for finding health pickups and items and stuff like that. But in the end, you go through each section of the game linearly and get an upgrade at the end of every single one. And there's different themes and new enemies and new abilities and new gameplay mechanics in each section. Yeah. Cool. So that's all for today, I think. I'm going to try to upload these at least once a week to show my progress. I'm looking to get this done within 3 to 4 months, or at least in a playable like beta state from start to finish. Obviously, the art, as you can see, is not ideal. I've got a platform here that's just completely orange, moving back and forth, and the turret looks like crap. And the shadow light maps I have to figure out how to make faster because this is miserable. It takes forever to regenerate this stuff. It'll look better later. Not that much better. I have no art ability. Anyway, yeah. This is it. Ow.